Long day.
All good, brother. Glad I got you for a few and chat about a billion different topics. But let's get things started with the P.O.D. and the I Got That tour. Looking forward to seeing you play with them once again at the Observatory on
Hmm.
29th. And old friends, I imagine, Bad Wolves. You got to be friends with Doc and
Yeah,
Lynn and stuff, and then Norma Jean, and then
John.
Blind Channel, who I'm looking forward to seeing as well.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna bust out some old songs too on that. Some songs that we haven't done, with me at least. But yeah, that's looking forward to that tour. Me and Doc go way back. Even before I was in Suicide Silence, he was um yeah, he was in God Forbid, and we would play shows. I would always go see his band, and one of his records is a really solid, inspirational record for me. So
Which one?
yeah. It's it's the one with the Statue of Liberty in the front of it. What's it called?
The Constitution.
That one. Yeah, I never
Yeah.
remember song names or well, some album titles, but
Especially that one was kind of funky because they ran all the songs together like it was like one continuous long song, like
yeah,
for the CD. It was a bunch of little like chapters.
yeah, it's cool, and it's just and the drumming on it too is incredible. Corey Pierce is like fucking like super shredder, but like brought a different level to the table with like that style of like Jersey thrash going into almost a hardcore vibe. But they were playing with like hardcore bands, so that's kind of how I heard of them mostly, through Showcase Theater here in Corona.
Yeah. Rest in peace, the showcase, man.
Dude, I know, yeah.
I heard there was a doc about the showcase.
Yeah, yeah. My friend Gabe Ochoa, him and a couple other dudes kind of just did a like a not like self-proclaimed, like official showcase what's going on because they're still friends with like Izad, who was the old owner.
Hmm.
And they used to actually work there. Him and like there's like a solid crew of like showcase theater heads that grew up in that block, were there from the beginning, helped book the shows, and like their bands ended up being the ones that played there and opened up. A lot of them still play music, but that's how we all kind of met back in the day. Showcase actually was like one of the center points for all those shows happening.
Oh yeah. Legendary venue in the IE. Dude, just going back to the POD tour, man, seeing you play with them now a couple times. I don't know if it's just because of knowing you in your past, but it really does feel almost like a heavier POD, like a version 2.0 of POD with your thunderous drums back there.
Oh man, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how, I was listening to them growing up, with all the other bands. So like that was kind of our bar growing up. So like playing with them now, it's like really rad because I get to bring that element, like, and it's like I've that's the only kind of drumming I've always known is like I've always had a front man who was fucking awesome, a beast. So it's like, okay, here we go. I just got to be the backbone and don't piss him off and don't fuck up the song.
Dude, especially with like Drop. I've been obsessed with that tune Drop since it's come now. I mean, that just listen to that song on repeat, and especially got to be a fun one for you to play.
Yeah, it's a really fun one. Robin Diaz did a great job in the studio with that song. He did the whole record, and he had recorded this while I was on tour in Europe with These Nuts before I even jammed with P.O.D. But I think they had hit me up like, "Hey, would you be down to do a song?" It's like, "Well, we're gonna go in the studio. Well, we'll just get our boy Robin." But I think they knowingly knew that like I might be playing these songs live, like after the recording. Like, well,
Right.
Alex might, jam with us. He's not really doing anything. So I think that kind of gave them like a direction of that because a lot of that drumming is sick. I'll give him all the credit, but a lot of it I'm like, damn, that's like something I would do right there. Like it has like simplicity. It doesn't have to be technical,
Right.
but it's still like clever enough to kind of to have that live vibe, because Love did pave a huge road for that band, and his drumming is iconic with the sound of POD and like that SoCal new metal sound. So, it's just all good players, all good batters.
Talking about how fun Drop is, but out of the classic POD, out of the hits, which one do you like the most? Youth of the Nation, just because it's got a little more to it, a little tongue
Ah,
beat.
Youth of the Nation's hard because it's such a theatrical song that it's kind of like the dynamics, it doesn't really get heavy. It's more of like taming the beast, like
Mhm.
walking with it because it's like chill and then there's like the toms and then it's another chill beat and it's like but the dynamics with the rest of the set. So that one's fun. My favorite song to play is it's this song called Soundboy Killer.
Oh
And
yeah.
I never really listened to that album. It's on the Circles record, I think. And I never like I just saw it on the like when I was learning songs and I was just like, oh, this song's cool. And I listened to it, I'm like, fuck, this song is really cool. It has like a Rage Against the Machine vibe, and it's like a classic Sunny, like rapping the whole time, and then it gets heavy and it's chill. So that Soundboy Killer is probably my favorite, but the classics too, I think like Boom. You can't go wrong with Boom. It's and I'm glad they like to play it first because I'm like, that one is just like so straightforward and heavy, you know?
Well, it's tough. That's what I was gonna say too, man. Set It Off is like it's such a great show opener. And then last time I
Yeah,
saw you guys opening with Drop, which is a great show opener. So now
yeah.
it's like, which one do you open with?
Dude, yeah, dude, they have like it's funny. We're in a text message battle right now. Not a battle, but like when we're trying to figure out set lists, it's like, well, we got to do the hits. It's like, well, the set's only 45 minutes. Like, just the hits alone is like 45 minutes.
You're
So
done.
we gotta cut some stuff or cut some songs or figure out a way to like play them intricately, because like we still want, I think they still want fans to go home hearing at least a handful of their favorite songs and not overdoing it on the new stuff, but the new stuff is also really cool. So it's like that's kind of a good problem to have. It's like, well, we want to play one new song, but we should play two. But if we play two, then we got to cut one of, we got to cut Satellite out of here.
Right,
It's like
right.
fuck. So it's really interesting with that. Yeah, it's always just crazy. Like the set list, I'm like, that's cool. Like I already foresee it.
And how long has
So
it
yeah.
been? How long have you been playing with them now?
Um, Definitely over a year. I think in this year in August it'll be 2 years. This year in August it'll be 2 years because I started jamming with them in 2022. So
And
like right before that, basically that Evanescence tour with Korn was my first run with them.
oh
And
wow.
that was I believe that was August or it might have been September. Might have been September, so September might be. My days are off. I'm like, I had just got back from Europe when that happens. So 2022 was kind of like, exiting Suicide, going on tour in Europe for two bands, and then coming straight home to
Coming
P.O.D. So
back.
it was like I was in technically in four bands that whole year somehow.
And let's talk about the other band that you're in. A couple new tunes out. Cassetta, loving the new ones out. Give them nothing and picking scabs. And what's
Yeah.
with that band? Where are we at with that? We were inching our way closer to a full length.
Oh, well, the Cassetta situation is one of those things too, where Kevin, who's in a band called Pressure Cracks, who I was a fan of, they're like a hardcore band with the singer Jason that's in Fever 333
Hmm.
is in this band Pressure Cracks that Kevin from Cassetta is. So I think he was putting together a band. When they had hit me up, they're kind of like, "Yo, we just need someone to play drums on this songs we have. How how would you feel like what's your rate? Like what would you do?" And I'm like, I don't really want to do anything that I don't really like. So I just like heard it and I'm like, well, like session wise, I'll just do it. And I think that's still kind of where we're at. Like now, well, we have those songs. Oh, Kevin just sent me like he sent me four songs and I'll track them here in my garage and then I send the stems back and then the basically it's like kind of like it's kind of like I'm an employee,
Huh.
but they're with the option of playing live. So it's really not like it's not my brainchild. Like the guys in the band are all the ones that do all like the new artwork. I got them hooked up with that because it's really sick. I was just like, this song has to have sick ass artwork. What is it? Give them nothing.
Hmm.
And my boy Garrett hooked that one up. But it's kind of just like a gig for me and with the same time I kind of support it. That's why I'm not too like I'm in the band because at the same time I'm leaving on tour and they have some shows coming up. I believe late April, so I'm already gone.
Mm,
But they're getting a fill-in, and they're probably gonna have to do that most of the time, like considering if I could play a show, that'd be great. I can do it, but it's one of those things where it's like it's kind of their thing. I love jamming with them, cool dudes. I like making music with them. They let me contribute arrangements and fixing stuff and playing what I really want. So
mhm.
it's kind of just like someone threw a hardcore band in my lap, and I'm like, okay, dude, I'll mess with this. It's cool. They take care of me, so it's like, all right, well, they get this is like their passion project because they I believe they all have kids. They're all married and have kids, and it's like it's cool. I'm like they're focused on their stuff, but as a friend of them, it's like, oh yeah, man, like this I gave them like like these are my priorities, and they're just totally cool with it. But yeah, there's 4 songs already put in, and I'm trying to squeeze in 2 more before I leave on Thursday to rehearsal for POD. Literally, like when we're done with this, I might uh, learn one of the songs and go try to track. But we want to get. I wish I could get more than we have 5 like ready to go, but I want to get like 7 for an EP. I would love just an LP, just bang it all out.
Yeah,
But if I'm gone for the next 4 months, I'd rather just focus on like a EP basically, make it really cool artwork, straightforward. Everything sounds the same. And put that out and then worry about the next thing later. Because Kevin, like, those guys crank out songs pretty quick. Like, they'll just write something and I'm like, oh, cool. And I'll just like chop it up a bit and then learn it, track it, edit it, send it back. So it's like a little machine. It's not like it was like that's what I kind of went into because in my school, like I'm used to jamming with people.
yeah,
Like, oh, let's get together every night and fucking get dinner and then jam and just drink coffee and scratch our heads and not be stuck on one song for a week. And it's this kind of like the natural way, but this
right.
one's kind of like the more office way, I guess. Office
Professional,
hardcore. But it's cool because everyone could do stuff at home.
right,
And it's harder for everyone. Like it's what sucks about being a musician and starting bands with um other musicians who they're not prioritizing, like they're not like touring musicians, I guess. Because I'm always like, yeah, when can you get together? I'm like, any day during the week from like 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. They're like, yeah, those are the days that normal people work, Alex.
right.
So that's not gonna. I'm like, fuck, like, because it's like that's the perfect thing. It's like waking up, going for jog or hike, drinking my coffee or tea. 10 o'clock hits a.m. Boom, put me behind a drum kit. I can do it for at least 3 or 4 hours.
Get
But
to work.
that's yeah.
And dude, a couple of things I want to touch upon. Obviously, got to talk a little Suicide Silence. I was digging through I have a box of CDs nearby, and I was digging through trying to find my Funeral Pyre CD, which I didn't have any luck finding. But
Dang.
I was
Old
trying to
school.
bust that out and be like, dude, I know I have that first album somewhere, man. I was digging through all my CDs, but no luck finding it. But got to talk a little Suicide Silence, and first thing I think of with Suicide Silence is the late great Mitch Lucker, and
Mhm.
curious if you had a story about meeting him or just a favorite story of yours with him, just something to kind of remember Mitch by. I mean, obviously you spent a ton of time with him. I got to interview him a few times back in the day. Great guy, great front man, but humanize Mitch a little bit for us.
Shit, that's a good story. Or a good question. I guess you brought up the Pyre, which was crazy about that. I was in so many bands playing after high school, and I was just playing guitar or bass, drums or whatever. And I was playing guitar in the Funeral Pyre um when when I met Mitch. W- Um how I joined Suicide Silence might be the good story. So
Okay.
I was playing in this band called the Funeral Pyre, and we were playing. Oh, I don't have it. It's like I found the tag the other day. Um, Playing a festival in downtown LA called California Metal Fest. It was
Mhm.
2006. So prior to that day, I was playing guitar in a band called the Funeral Pyre for about a year and a half, touring, and I was like 18 or 19 years old. I was still like a child. Um, Garza from Suicide Silence, who I've known when I was in high school, he we played in bands together at the Showcase, at Chain Reaction, Canoga Park, all these like right in the early 2000s, ones and twos and threes, where we were like high school kids. But he always knew me as a drummer because I was a drummer back then. I was like total like new metal, young Alex Lopez, Joey Jordison wannabe, Abe Cunningham, Morgan Rose, like that was like when the thing was popping. So he just kind of liked that vibe for me. But then like towards the 2006 5 era, things started going like death metal and hardcore. It's kind of how the deathcore situation happened. Anyways, long story short, Garza had knew me from that whole scene. We all kind of knew each other, but Suicide had kind of just gotten they played that show with the funeral pyre, and I just remember that's the show where Garza kind of came up to me and was like, "Hey, Alex, what's up? How you been?" And I'm like, "Hey, dude, you guys are like killing it now. Like, you guys are gonna be huge like in a couple years." He's like, "Oh, thank you." But anyways, do you still play drums? And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, yeah, because our we're gonna let go of our drummer. We're trying out dudes, but I don't know. Like I couldn't think of anyone. I just saw you right now, and you're here, and I remember you, and you still play, right? And I'm like, yeah, totally. And then later that day, he's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna go tell the band, and I was like, oh shit! Like I'm packing my guitar in. I'm tired. I'm 18. Everyone in this band's like 22. They're all like fighting each other. Typical metal dudes on tour. I was definitely underage, and they were a little bit older than me. So um, later that day, just see like I'm about to play and I'm tuning my guitar, and then and Mitch comes down with Garza. He goes, "Oh, it's Mitch," and I was like, "Oh, dude, nice to meet you." He's like, "Wait, so you're a drummer too?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do both." He's like, "Oh, tight," because he knew me from guitar. He didn't know I played drums. And then he saw me play, and then he kind of was like digging the music, and then I saw him later. But it wasn't until later, like I tried out like 2 days later. Um, and I'm in there jamming with. I get there. There's a guy in front of me. There's a guy waiting outside. And then like I'm jamming, Garza comes in. We start playing Corn automatically and Slipknot, and this is like 2006. And then like I learned some songs or stuff, but Mitch came in. I remember like with he had like Del Taco or Taco Bell, and he just like comes in and he just starts eating his food and watching me, and then like the song ends and he goes and he like this straight up he's just like, dude, should we just tell all those other drummers to piss off now? Like he was like jokingly because he saw like my ethic and he saw that we're all the same age, and he probably remembered me from the other band, so we all kind of knew each other, and everyone that was trying out I think was just dudes that were, I don't know, maybe it just didn't click, it didn't mesh well, but his ability to kind of, and also like I think also I was just like, dude, we have to write some songs, I could bring in I have a mixing board with a recording thing. I could record our songs and we could make demos. And they were like, "Oh shit, you have all that stuff? Cool. Yeah, that's kind of cool. You can record stuff and you're drumming, and then you can help write." Because I think by then I was always kind of a writer, so like the mentality of bringing that element. But I mean, yeah, a lot of the times most people don't even know, but most of the times the first records that we did, um, me and him would sit in a room and work on vocals a lot because it was always drums and vocals that kind of help. And me and Eddie as well too. Mitch
Mm,
always had these really cool things to say, but it was always like sitting there and that ability, that connection where it's like, oh shit, like we would track it all at Garza's, and then I'd come home, and then he would come over in the night, and then we would start tracking like just fuck around vocals, like pre-production.
mhm.
But that was kind of one thing that he was always very like wanted things to be hooky, and the competition back then was like not too many things in the death metal world were hooky, or at least the death core world.
Right.
And then never really wanting to make the same record twice. He was a big thing about like every album was kind of different,
Hmm.
which kind of Suicide kept that reputation. It's like, okay, well, this album shouldn't sound like this one, and this one should sound a little bit different. Everything should kind of have a kind of like a not necessarily, maybe like Metallica when they went from, you know, I don't even know, Master of Puppets, and then what was after that, and Justice for All,
Yep.
and then it was the Black Album,
Yeah. Big changes.
and then you get Load. How those records are so like those four records are so sick, and that's my one of my favorite eras, but it's so like changing, you know. We always had that kind of vibe, and I think now that I mean they're still doing the not typical sound, but their signature sound, which is cool.
Couple of things about coming into the band. When you had come in, were any of those songs for the cleansing done yet, or did you have a part in writing those songs?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was crazy because so I get in the band and they're just kind of like, "Well, do you have a passport?" And I'm like, "I have everything. Yeah, we're good to go." It's like they knew that I already had toured before. So that was another thing. Like, does he know how to tour? Also, another thing was like, does he have a license? Because Mark didn't drive, Garza didn't drive yet, or he was afraid to drive. Um, one dude drove, and then Mitch had like he's got his license suspended for driving, like driving a golf cart into a wall or something. He got in trouble. He was a bad boy.
Of course.
Um, but yeah, so he was it was illegal for him to drive. So they were like, "Oh, you can drive," and all the cool, hell yeah. But when we started, pretty much off the bat, we're like we're gonna tour, so like we only have 5 songs written. We have these other songs kind of written, and then like they basically gave me the thing. That's kind of what started with the recording situation. Like, well, we have to write like 5 more songs so we can have a full set for this headliner we have. It was a spreading disease tour. We had to write some songs just to fill a set. And those songs we wrote ended up being like the first 5 songs of The Cleansing.
Oh wow. So
Yeah, it was just like instant. And it's like, it was no thought. A bunch of 17 and 19 and 20-year-old kids writing songs to like, oh, this is going to be cool live. This will be cool live, you know, and listening to them back and being like, oh, let's change that part. And then we had tapes back then. I don't know, like no one had could do CD burners, but it would just take too long to do that. It was just easier. And granted, it's 2006, like a tape deck was still kind of normal. I like you had a portable CD player, but if you had a tapes, it was still kind of like, whoa, like that was probably the last year where it was like before obsolescence. But it was just easier for him, like for us to record a tape and then record tape to tape, and everyone would just go home and listen to it and then record any ideas they had. So it's kind of essentially the same thing as a phone. It's just a little bit easier, you know.
sure.
But that's kind of how that went through. And it was after that, it was like doing pre-production with or the producer, and then everything that whole album was played live too. So we had already been rehearsing these songs in a room um from like a whole tour and then a month
Oh
and
wow.
then going into the studio to play them. It was just already like, okay, cool, I already played it. That's another thing too. That album hits hard, but I don't know if a lot of people took into account like that we did get off a tour where we were playing those songs live straight into pre-production, straight into the studio. So it was just like shooting a three-pointer like 80 times and then just shooting a three-pointer again. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. You made it. Cool. Like, you know, it has that sound of like, this is the way it's supposed to be, you know?
Yeah, I'd read that that album was recorded live, and speaking about the first couple of albums, and me playing drums as a kid a little bit, I noticed on the first 2 albums, you kinda had that piccolo snare, they almost call that trash can snare, not I mean,
Yeah.
not quite, Saint Anger style, but certainly
Yeah.
higher snare, and then I always kinda thought that that was a little bit of the signature sound for Suicide Silence, especially with the breakdowns. Every time you'd break down, hit that track,
Yeah.
kinda set the mood, but
Yeah.
then it kinda went away on album 3, and after that point, was that a conscious decision?
Yeah, that's funny you bring that up because live I crank the shit out of it. But and what my favorite snare tone growing up was that combination of like 311 snare, which back then that's what we called it, like piccolo,
Right.
and Limp Bizkit snare tone, like that piccolo, and how I don't even know. I had the Joey Jordison signature snare before we recorded the cleansing, and I would crank it, and I did sound like a piccolo. And then we went in the studio. That's when I first found out about a bell brass, about the Terminator snare. And John Travis, the producer, was like, "Yo," because I looked at it and it looked like a spaceship, and I'm like, "What is that snare?" And they're like, "Oh, it's called a Terminator. It's a bell brass. It's what's used on the Black album, Rage uses it, The Offspring. It's like Meshuggah snare tone, Deftone snare tone.
Oh,
It's the
wow.
snare. So I used that on the first record, but I cranked the shit out of it. So it did have more crack to it. Second record, we repeated it. Third, we had it and we were with Steve Evans, and we're kind of like, well, I really like like if we just go back to the Black Album snare, like how it's just kind of flat, there, which was kind of that was kind of a big topic. It's like, how do we want to? It was kind of like, well, we did do the high pitched snare on the last records. Should we do it on this one? It's like, and there's actually some songs we did use two snares.
Mm.
We did some where we tightened them up, but for the most part, everything after that, I think I was just like, oh, let's keep it middle tension now, so that it's like, because that was one thing is like we wanted that explosive like, dun not dun like you could go heavy too with a lower tune, and still like a lot of drummers still tune lower than me. Like I feel like right now with P.O.D. I tuned low, and they're like, dude, it's tuned really high. I'm like, really? To me, low is like Beatles, like Ringo Starr,
Right, right.
like, like maybe some I don't even know John Bonham low, but like still it's kind of like with Cassetta I kind of with the newer stuff, all that stuff I cranked the shit out of it. I brought this dude named Tino from the drummer of Mice and Men.
Oh, yeah.
He's from San Diego, but he calls it the IE snare, like Inland Empire. He's like, that's the IE tone, man. That's the IE snare right there. Like he's like, you love that IE snare. And I'm like, it's cool. It cuts through.
It
But
definitely cuts through.
our bass player Dan Kenny was a massive fan of that too. Like a lot of brutal death metal, like the brutal stuff. That's kind of where the worlds went together there. It's like the brutal death metal had that tight snare, fast kicks, like Decapitated or something like that. And then the new metal world had the tight snare. So it was like the tight snare was in for a while.
Yeah.
It might be coming back. I just bought a piccolo too, like last year and just got it ready. I don't know what I'm gonna use it for, but we'll see. It'll work with POD.
Well, speaking of music and you making music, ran into you at NAMM and you were telling me about a solo project you were talking about putting together. Where are we at on that?
Um, yeah, I've been writing with my wife, Tatiana. Um, just some songs as far as like getting vocals down on it, but I've been writing my own stuff for a while. Not too far off what you would think. Heavy, rhythmic, kind of just collaboration of all like the influences I have. But I think the right now it's kind of on a big pause because everything I have a lot going on, which is a good thing. Because I was like I had nothing. I don't think I work sound at this venue called the Observatory
Right.
here, so I do front of house there, which keeps me pretty busy during the weeks. Aside from like cassetta stuff, like working on that on days that I can work on that. But I'm like 5 or 6 songs in to stuff, but I was planning to maybe put something out. It was a little bit more concrete earlier when I had less going on. And it's not really top priority because like the more time I spend listening to old songs, I kind of dig back into them and start working on them more, or just keeping it on the back burner, keeping it on there. But thinking about putting a bunch of singers together, writing all the music, playing all the instruments, maybe have some people play some solos, or mainly collaborate with maybe some more producers that make beats,
Mm.
or like some kind of non-metal situation. Not experimental, not really industrial or hip hop or rap, but something along the lines of that whole umbrella of digital world. Who knows? Because it's like I don't want to just have a one trick pony album. Like I want something to be chill, where it's like everyone could kind of find something in there because of my all my influences, but not being too avant garde and crazy. Just kind of keeping it like, oh, that's chill, like something you could cruise to. But more so like that, yeah, having her do some stuff on there. There's a bunch of singers I made friends with throughout the years, so it's
Maybe
kind of
get
just like, oh, yeah, who would be cool on this, or what people would be cool on this, but without like overdoing it, or underdoing it, where just they just do a little thing and it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's like making the song, serving it properly.
Any idea when that's going to be coming out, or like you said, kind of back
Um,
burner now?
I was planning for it to come out like by now, but I don't know. We'll see how this year goes. I haven't even opened up a session on it in a while, so hopefully, I mean, it'll come out eventually. Couple years,
Okay.
probably. Yeah, probably when P.O.D records the next album. Hopefully, they hit me up for that one. Or I,
Awesome.
well, if I am a part of the writing process, which hopefully could be, um, then it'll just the solo stuff will happen when it happens.
Right.
But yeah, I think the main thing is like focusing all my efforts with them and being the best, drummer I could be.
Last thing I got to hit you with, dude, because we do a feature called Mandatory Metallica, and you may have given it away a little bit earlier, but I've been having this Metallica debate, debating their greatest thrash metal album, which I feel like the first one's kind of a covers album, so it kind of comes down to Ride the Lightning versus Master of Puppets. If you had to choose one out of those two, which one would it be?
I would probably be Masters of Puppets. Yeah, because Ride the Lightnings has the jammers, but like Master just have has like I think I don't know, they kind of just feel like the same record, but they're not, I'm a big at Justice for All guy though, through obvious reasons, because it's just a drum record,
Right.
you know, a lot of stuff, but Master of Puppets is probably the one that's more influential on me. I was playing those songs with my brother in our garage, like growing up, learning all those songs, and then like that's when all the videos are coming out. That's when like around that was a long time ago, but I remember growing up to like Cliff Mall,
Yeah.
the
The
video,
VHS.
yeah, the VHS. So I was watching that growing up, and most of the songs they were jamming on that were all Master of Puppets. Um, but I think that one would probably be the winner for me.
Yeah, I think it's a complete record. I mean, I think it's solid all the way through. It's got ballads, it's got instrumentals, much better production than Ride the Lightning. I thought Ride was kind of lacking in the production, kind of sounded like it was recorded in a bathroom a little bit to me.
Yeah. When was that? Was like what, 80, 84?
Or yeah, so it's like the 40th anniversary now. Damn.
Damn.
Well,
Yeah.
just to put a button on it to play a song for Mandatory Metallica. What's your favorite Metallica tune? What can we play for you?
My all-time favorite tune?
Yeah,
Hero of the Day. No, I'm just kidding. It's close though.
really.
Uh man, I mean, Dyer's Eve is always been my favorite one. That's the last song on Justice for All. Really just like the all around. This it's like probably one of their fastest older songs that was probably like cut up and like they probably did a bunch of stuff to that to make it what it is. But that song it's still one of my favorite songs. Riff wise too. And there's some technical stuff in there, but Dyer's Eve would be probably one of my favorite songs from them.
Bitchin',
And
we'll
it's
rock that one for you.
yeah, it's definitely not like their best song, but it's probably my favorite. But coming from a drummer's point of view, that's like
Absolutely.
that's one I could always go to.
It's funny. I asked your wife that same question. I think she picked the Outlaw Torn. I was like, what?
Yeah, probably. Everyone has a different connection because I probably would have said like I would have to be a cover, probably something off Garage Days. It might
Oh,
even be it might even be like that's even harder because there's like
five songs.
yeah, there's that one, and then even when they did the Garage Days Inc. like that, the two CD version with like they did the Sabbath medley,
Right.
which is the Sabbath medley to me is fucking sick too. Like so it's kind of hard, like, because that album came out like at my prime of like music, where I was like, oh, like Metallica's still cool. Like now they're doing newer stuff that it's not like the older stuff, which wasn't even that old. It's crazy to think that too. Like if you're listening to the music in 97, I was like full blown into music, but thinking that records in 1984, which were like 12 years before,
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's an older record. But now in hindsight, when I think of a record like The Cleansing, and it's that was like 2006 or 7. But then you flash forward, it's like 2024. It's like, holy crap, that record now it's like, wait, now those records are like 40 years ago. Like, so something that's like over like 14, 10 years old is really not that old, but you think it's like an older record.
Yeah.
When I guess at that age, I was like, oh, that's from like the 80s. It's like, yeah, dude, the 80s were 10 years ago or like 15 years ago. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like 15 years old. That makes total sense, you know?
Saint Anger is over 20 years old. I mean, and that's
Yeah.
like new Metallica, you know?
Dude, that's yeah, and that's that whole record too is that's another record that I really, really love too. Um, I think it has to do with a lot of it was the the surrounding of the movie too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it kind of has that whole entire kind of how like a year and a half of life has the Black Album surrounding it. I think they kind of their approach was the same thing, which gives Saint Anger a little bit more. It's not so weird, you know. It's like this is what they were working on. This is where their head was at. So they're an interesting that band. They're definitely one of my favorite bands in the world. Um, Lars is one of my biggest inspirations for sure. I
Yeah.
think I've always had Lars elements in my playing, as far as keeping things simple and being a, you know, a writer and collaborative member and a complainer a lot.
Yeah. I'll be
Dude,
in touch, man. Thank you so much.
all right, broski, later.
Later. Bye bye.